You'll often hear coaches tell butterflyers to keep their hips up. And while that's definitely an outcome we want swimmers to achieve, it's confusing cause and effect. Let's take a look at what swimmers have to do to get their hips up. Hi everyone, Andrew here, helping you help your swimmers get faster. Keeping the hips high in butterfly is critical because it allows swimmers to minimize the amount of resistance that they create as they move through the water. The better they can keep their hips up, the faster they're going to go, and the more they're going to be able to sustain their speed. But knowing what swimmers have to do doesn't necessarily inform us about how to help them learn how to do it. To accomplish that goal, we need to understand what needs to happen for the hips to go up. That will allow us to design training interventions to improve those skills. What does it all come down to? It all comes down to the kick. So there are two key points in fly where swimmers need to get their hips up. The first is when the hands enter the water right here, and that's to allow for swimmers to get into a streamlined position and not have the legs dragging down by the bottom of the pool. And the second time the hips need to come up is right here so that the hands can be lifted up towards the surface so that they can be recovered over the water as smoothly and easily as possible. If swimmers have to drag their arms through the water, that's going to create a whole lot of resistance. And so swimmers have to kick right here so that the hips lift up. And so when swimmers are pulling and lifting their upper body, that's going to drive the hips down. We can see that happen here. The head and the chest goes up, the hips go down. And so to get the hips back up right here, swimmers have to kick. And so again, you can see the hips lift up after the upper body is lifted, and that's going to be driven by the kick. So the kick is what's going to get the hips up. If swimmers are focused on the hips themselves, they're not going to be nearly as effective as if they can use the kick to move the hips. So when the hands enter here, swimmers are going to kick. There's going to be a backward component to the kick, and there's going to be a downward component to the kick. The backward component is going to send them forward down the pool. That's great for creating propulsion. The downward part of the kick is going to lift the hips up. And we can see that happen right there. The kick goes down, the feet go down, and then the hips pop right up. So the better swimmers can be with executing a strong kick at the right time in the right way, the more they're going to be able to change their body position and lift their hips up to the surface. So again, if we watch this position here, the head is going to come up, the chest is going to come up, the hips are going to go down, but by kicking, swimmers can lift the hips up back to the surface, and that allows for a smooth recovery. So a strong kick upon entry there and a strong kick upon exit there is going to be absolutely critical for swimmers to get their hips up to allow the stroke to move effectively. They've got to get their hips up at the front of the stroke in order to get back into alignment after they take that breath. So right here, they're in a pretty bad position in terms of alignment. The hips are down, the chest is up, and they're going to drive the arms in and kick. That's going to pop the hips up, and now they're in a much more streamlined position. And then just as importantly, they've got to execute that kick at the back, and that's going to, again, pop the hips up so that the arms can be recovered so that the stroke can flow through. So kick timing is important, and the kick itself is really important for lifting the hips. It's not just about creating power to move swimmers down the pool, although that certainly matters, that certainly helps. It's also about repositioning the hips within the stroke. That allows for less resistance to be created. That allows for more speed to be created. So a different swimmer here, we're going to see the same dynamics. This is a swimmer swimming at 200 meters. Previous swimmer is swimming over 100 meters. And again, it's going to be the same thing. So in this position right here, they're creating a lot of resistance. The hips are low, the chest is up, they're kind of plowing through, their whole upper body is out of the water, which is going to push everything down. But then things come back in and boom, that kick, there's that very, very quick transition to not a great body position to a really good aligned body position. So again, the hip position is going to be driven by the kick. Swimmers do need to get their hips up, but that's not by manipulating their upper body or kind of arch their back or push their hips up. They need to kick down, and that's going to push the hips up. And then again, the chest is rising. That's going to cause the hips to drop a little bit. And then boom, with that kick, the hips pop up right to the surface. That allows for those arms to swing right over. And then we're back into a position that's not creating a lot of resistance. And then that kick is going to drive us out of that. So to facilitate a great arm recovery, to facilitate great pull, and to maintain great body position throughout the whole stroke, swimmers need to be kicking at the right time and in the right way, and that's going to allow them to change the position of the hips And if they can influence the position of the hips in a positive way, they're going to be able to create less resistance, which means they can create more speed. One more swimmer here, and we're starting off with the hips driven down, the back is arched, and again, creating a lot of resistance. They need to get out of that position as quickly as they can. So the hands come in, and then boom, that kick pops the hips right up to the surface. We're back into a streamlined position, and it's going to happen really fast, and it's going to happen relatively effortlessly. That kick is going to have a direct impact on the hips. Swimmers don't need to try to manipulate the hips. They just kick, and everything's going to be in the right place. And then as we pull, the hips are going to drop slightly, and then kick. That's going to get them up to the surface. That allows for a smooth recovery. We're back to our initial position, which is creating position. The hips are dropping a little bit, and now swimmers have to drive those hips back up with the kick. So whenever the upper body is going to rise, that's going to cause a loss of hip position, and that loss of hip position needs to be counteracted by the kick. And so here, hips are down a little bit, boom, pop them back up to the surface, and then once the upper body recovers, that's going to help reduce the impact on the hip position, but swimmers can really exaggerate getting the hips back up by kicking down and popping them up. So again, it's all about an effective kick to manage the position of the hips. And when a good kick is happening at the right time, it makes it a lot more impactful for managing the position of the hips and getting them to move where we want them to go. So if we want to positively influence hip position, it's not about just telling swimmers to get their hips up. It's about helping them learn how to kick effectively and how to kick effectively at the right time to positively influence their hips. Now these two kicks are happening when the body is in a different position. The first one there, the body is level in the water, and then the second one here, the body is at an incline. If you want to help swimmers learn how to develop both of those kicks, check out the video below.